So as President of the Bishops' Conference and for all our bishops, I'm honoured to be with you, to encourage you in your work and open this conference as stewards of the mission. I do so with great esteem for the religious orders who founded, auspiced and encouraged the gospel-based work of health and aged care. And in the spirit of the Beatitudes, I was sick and you visited me, we see represented here and even further the whole range of skilled care and advancement of medicine, of compassionate support of the sick and elderly, and of new developments in governance appropriate to the modern world. And the determination to keep Jesus Christ and his vision for humanity at the centre has inspired so many religious, their collaborators, and now in this new stage, the new leaders in Catholic health facilities, to place our identity and the spirit of the gospel at the centre of all that we do. In recent years, I've been tremendously impressed by the meetings which I've had with some of the religious and lay leaders of our health services. The dialogue they've had with me and between themselves has convinced me that we have come a tremendous long way in the journey, inspired by the work of religious who have drawn lay people into collaboration and now into leadership in advancing the mission of the Church in health and aged care. So certainly I see this as a stage when it is a missionary vocation when we are looking forward. We now enter a new phase where this leadership is strengthened in its identity, vision for the future and collaboration. And it's a joy to me to see that this conference has set itself the task of developing a 10-year plan to support the formation of leaders. And while I would pay tribute to the work done in individual hospitals and aged care services, I do believe that the future is in what we can do together, because when we work together, we draw on the great diversity, the great strengths and capacities that we all have. A typical example down in my part of the country, recently in Melbourne, we've established a Catholic Leadership Centre, which is owned by the Archdiocese and working in collaboration with the Australian Catholic University to provide further formation for teachers, nurses, social workers. The formation of our prospective leaders for the future and of those who've just stepped up into leadership is something which I'm sure you would agree deserves the highest priority. And all need a deep awareness of the understanding which is the foundation of the action we undertake. Probably nothing more would help us in this reflection than some of the great teaching legacy of Pope Benedict XVI. And we see the clear emphasis on love and hope given by Pope Francis in his early days, and the call of Pope Benedict in his first encyclical, Deus Caritas Est. It picks out clear themes for all of us. We've come to know and believe in God's love for us, and then we reflect it and carry it on. He makes the point that there is a great love which God offers us as human beings. The link between that love and the reality of human love is founded in the person of Jesus Christ. And such formation, therefore, that we offer to our collaborators needs to encompass a real focus on Jesus Christ, a clear understanding of the dignity of each human person, and adequate professional development with the backdrop of Christ sharing his vision for a renewed humanity. And I know that this has been true of Catholic health over many years. Last year, the guidelines for understanding governance of Catholic health and aged care has been established as a joint initiative of the Bishops and Catholic Health Australia and Catholic Religious Australia. So our activity to deepen the awareness and formation of our leaders always exists in a context of great realism. We have to admit that in some quarters among Catholics, there's been a loss of confidence in some aspects of the institutional church. However, one very senior retired politician, known for his pronouncements, recently said to me when I rang him to congratulate him on something good he'd said about Catholic education, he said, "We do have to address the aspects of challenge, but we mustn't lose sight of the essential mission of the Church and of the magnificent work in health, education, social work and aged care. These are the cutting edge of our outreach into society and of genuine service, which is deeply appreciated by all people of goodwill. So this places our present situation in a much broader context and puts you, particularly in health and aged care, in a situation where you and we can really make a difference. In a wider society, of course, because of some of our challenges, and because the current mood is just to give people what they want, without regard for what I've said, the nature of each human being, and the principles which underpin relationships in society, and indeed the functioning of society itself, there is a perception of a lack of relevance of the voice of the Church to contemporary problems of living. However, I would suggest that to ignore the Church's voice and our principle is to allow society to drift to fragmentation. We must admit too, though, that our relationship with secular governments is becoming more complex and rather challenged. And because of technical advantages and government regulation, we need to compete for adequate funding, while at the same time maintaining independence and an ethical stance in service provision. We cannot put aside the scrutiny of our activities which the Royal Commission will provide. However, far from seeing merely challenges, as I've said, I see this as a time of opportunity. Let me give an example. We are here at this particular time, and there has emerged in society a desperate search for meaning and connection. And often healing ministries can be an important voice of the gospel for so many. While some are critical of the Church, they're also embracing of the gospel in action, which is shown through your organisations and institutions. It's of great credit to our religious and our leaders that while Catholic health and aged care for services are in decline and under threat in other countries, largely due to you, the opposite is true in Australia. We continue to grow, to expand the services we offer, particularly to the aged, in a way that governments are not able to sustain. And this has strengthened our position and has made us an essential part of what is taking place. That politicians' comment witness to the way in which the value of what you are doing is perceived in broader society. So, healing ministries are more than ever of significant importance to the Church and to society at this time. And that's why I would say that your leadership and your continued commitment to Christ and to Catholic identity is vital for the positioning of the Church in society and for the service that we are able to render. Sometimes, of course, press reports will minimise what we're doing, saying that our contribution is very limited, when in fact increasingly in our facilities we're reaching out to people not provided for by government regulation or healthcare. The compassion that we show goes beyond what can be legislated for or perceived in a narrow secular mindset. And it's even more important to keep our mission clear as we compete with others on a commercial basis and with government pressures. There is a natural anxiety about funding in hospitals and aged care services, and that can become too significant a preoccupation. We might even say that our leaders have to meet all the commercial and statutory requirements and are on top of it to be seen to approach with a Christian vision. Rather, I believe it's the reverse that applies. If we acquire a Christian vision through relationship with Christ in person, then this will motivate us to face the challenges with new energy and dedication and will help us to use our skills to make our facilities an even greater reflection of the love of God that we know ourselves and seek to give to others. At present, perhaps, it may seem that there are fewer people willing to take on governance roles once fulfilled by clergy and religious. I do have the firm conviction, however, that there are wonderful lay people with great skills, magnificent commitment to God, to faith and to compassionate service who can be invited to these tasks and formed in them. And I do affirm and express gratitude for the commitment and vision of those who take them on. And I think that's borne out in the meetings that I've had over the last few years with some of your leaders. I'm tremendously impressed by what we have already. I believe that our challenge now is to form our upcoming leaders with similar enthusiasm. Really, what we've done in the transition from religious to lay leadership, we've discovered a wealth of talent and giftedness in the people of the church, enriched by their family life and their love of Christ. And that vision handed on to them is inspiring, and they then carry it further with great generosity and perception. Obviously, in governance, the church's vision has been helped by our canonical responsibilities, the relationships and the wisdom of our tradition, which are means to personal deepening and enrichment of the facilities for which we exercise responsibility. After all, the charity that you exercise theologically is a reflection of the mutual love exchanged in the Trinity and an extension of the love of neighbour grounded in the love of God, which is a responsibility for the whole church. And if we go back in our tradition from the earliest days when Justin Martyr spoke of the Christian celebration of Sunday, he mentioned also the charitable activity linked to the Eucharist. The great Christian writer Tertullian relates how pagans were struck by the Christians' concern for the needy of every sort. And throughout the history of the church, every diocese, every part of the church had its charitable activity on behalf of the poor and suffering, which has been an essential part of the work of the church from the beginning. May I also pay tribute too, on these days when priests are fewer in number, although in this country, in my diocese, with a gradual small increase in vocation and assistance with other priests from nearby countries, there has emerged a wonderful tradition of pastoral care in our hospitals and aged care facilities. And I want to pay tribute to the role of lay pastoral practitioners in our facilities, where generous Christians with deep spirituality are providing remarkable support to those who are sick and elderly, praying with them and walking alongside our priests. The outreach of lay Christians to their brothers and sisters is highly significant, and it's for this reason that I want to say particularly thank you on behalf of the whole church for all that they do, and ask that you communicate that thanks to them. So as we turn to the future, I believe that we're given a great opportunity to extend the love of Christ in the way that the church has always done, by associating our sacramental and teaching ministry with an essential outreach to the poor, the sick, and the elderly. And I believe that these characteristics should distinguish us. Number one, being faithful to our purpose. From personal encounter with God's love comes authentic witness to Christ in action. Two, to communicating genuine compassion and care, which sees in the sick or elderly person an image of Christ. Three, provision of appropriate formation to engage more deeply with Jesus in prayer and to learn of the vision and mission of the church. Four, to respond especially to those whose needs are overlooked by our society. And five, to explore possibilities with other Catholic services in responding to the challenges, particularly in the area of formation. So, personal contact with Christ, appreciation that a mission is given to each of us, and the importance of our individual appreciation of being called and sent. What we do under the grace of God will be effective to an extent, perhaps, that we didn't imagine. So, dear friends, our conference, Stewards of the Mission, is highly significant for the future of the Church in coming years. I do totally endorse your 10-year plan because I believe that the church depends upon leaders being well-formed to provide the gospel vision, professional competence and spiritual awareness which will carry us forward effectively. Thank you too for the way in which your facilities are expanding. The life, the forward planning, the genuine desire to serve people with gospel values and professional competence are indicative that the compassion of Christ is shown to those who need it most. I was certainly very touched by that first appearance of Pope Francis on the central loggia of St. Peter's. In his first homily to the cardinals, he stressed something which I believe would help all of us. Those three things: that we walk together, that we build up the church, and that we profess our faith in Jesus, the only Lord. And then, of course, on Palm Sunday, he went on to stress the redemption that comes from the cross and the serene joy and commitment, and then, of course, the dynamism and energy of youth. So there's so much that we carry with us as we move forward, and so much that we have as we engage with younger members of our facilities so that they too can be trained for leadership. We too have to take our focus from Christ, our joy from the leadership of the Holy Father, and our commitment to building up the church as part of the work that we're invited to do as leaders. Finally, I mentioned Pope Benedict's first encyclical, the link between the Eucharist and the charitable activities of the church, and your work in Catholic health and aged care is an essential activity which balances the sacramental work of the church. It brings the loving care of Christ, given for us on the cross and in the Eucharist, into their daily lives. With a relationship with Christ, which the vision which Christ has of people, will be motivated to be the very best we can be in our particular part of the church's outreach. And we bring the love of Christ to others because we have come to believe in God's love for us. We are so lucky. We have received so much. Thank you for all that you're doing. We need to show to the world the reason for the hope that's in us. We have the light that the darkness will never overpower, the darkness of human weakness or sin, because it is the light of Christ which scatters the darkness.